to the people of the Lord and all of the well-wishers who were part of my husband's homegoing celebration and say thank you.
Some losses never stop hurting, no matter how much time passes. For countless gospel fans, Rance Allen's name still represents faith, hope, and one of the most unforgettable voices in music history. Now, heartbreaking news has reopened old emotions, leaving fans searching for answers and remembering the legacy he left behind. What exactly happened, and why has this moment become so emotional for everyone who admired the gospel icon? Stay with us to know the tragic details. The surgery nobody saw coming. The part of this story that keeps people up at night is how normal everything seemed before it all fell apart. In late October of 2020, Bishop Rance Allen checked into Heartland ProMedica in Sylvania, Ohio, for back surgery. He was 71 years old. The procedure itself went according to plan. Recovery looked strong enough that his family was told he would be discharged and sent home early the following week. His younger brother, Steve Allen, later said that Rance had been doing so well that nobody in the family was preparing for anything other than a homecoming. And then something shifted, and nobody has ever been able to fully explain what that something was. In the early morning hours of Saturday, October 31st, at approximately 3 a.m., Bishop Rance Allen died unexpectedly. His wife Ellen and manager Toby Jackson released a joint statement confirming only that he had passed away while recovering from a medical procedure. The exact cause of death was never officially revealed. There were reports that Rance had lost roughly 20 pounds in the months leading up to the surgery. Whether that weight loss came from dietary changes, exercise, or something more serious was never disclosed. Reports had circulated as far back as 2018, suggesting a possible heart-related health scare, though his personal staff denied those claims at the time. What is confirmed is that Rance Allen had undisclosed pre-existing health conditions that the public never knew about. His brother Steve put it as plainly as grief would allow him to. He told the press he never fully recovered from that. Bryant Scott, the president of Tiscott Records, captured the shock that hit the entire gospel industry when he said, "I wasn't expecting to hear this news this morning. This is a great loss to us personally, but also to the church community at large." The timing made every part of the mourning process worse. October of 2020 was the thick of the COVID-19 pandemic. The family announced that due to coronavirus restrictions, only a private memorial service would be held. The man who had spent 5 decades filling sanctuaries and arenas with a voice that could shake the walls was buried without the thousands of people who would have come to say goodbye. A jurisdictional memorial service was promised after public gathering restrictions were lifted, but for the immediate grieving period, the fans, the congregants, the collaborators who had shared stages with him across 50 years were all locked out by a virus that had already stolen so much from everyone. And the day before he died, the Rance Allen Group released what nobody knew would be their final single, "I'm So Glad It's Christmas," pushed out across digital platforms on October 30th. A holiday song that now carries a weight no piece of music should ever have to carry. But the single most devastating detail about that weekend would not surface until Kirk Franklin picked up his phone and recorded a video that left his own fans in tears. The song that will never be heard. Kirk Franklin posted to Instagram with a caption that read, "2020 just keeps breaking my heart." In the video, he was visibly shaken, struggling to hold himself together, and he shared something that nobody outside their inner circle had known. He had just finished writing and producing a brand new single specifically for Rance Allen. The song was complete. The arrangement was done. Everything was ready. All they needed was for Rance to walk into the studio and lay down that voice. The voice that had defined an entire genre of American music. He died before they ever got the chance to record it together. The tributes that followed crossed every genre line Rance Allen had spent his life dissolving. Yolanda Adams wrote publicly, "Please pray for the family and friends of our esteemed brother Bishop, Dr. Rance Allen. He has transitioned, and we know his beautiful spirit will live on through his global music legacy." Gloria Gaynor, the disco legend behind "I Will Survive," said he would surely enrich the heavenly choir now. CeCe Winans, Donnie McClurkin, David and Tamala Mann, John P. Key, Tasha Cobbs, Fred Hammond, Layla Hathaway, and Charlie Wilson all posted tributes. The outpouring came from gospel, from R&B, from soul, from hip-hop, from every corner of the music world that Rance Allen had touched over 50 years. In Toledo, where Rance had pastored New Bethel Church of God in Christ for 35 years, the grief was personal in ways that national headlines could not capture. Shyam Hampton, a pastor whose grandfather's funeral Rance had sung at in 2019, told reporters, "He challenged me as a musician to broaden my musical talent. To me, he was a superstar." Local blues legend Ramona Collins compared his impact on Toledo to the jazz legacy of Jon Hendricks. And Reverend Prentice Anderson, who had himself recorded for Motown in the 1960s, said something that might be the most fitting tribute of all. He was able to get along with the rich man on the mountain and the poor child in the valley, and made everybody feel comfortable. 5 Grammy nominations across a 50-year career, 0 wins, 5 decades of recording, over 20 albums, and the song that would have been his next release died with him on a hospital bed in Ohio, while a pandemic kept the people who loved him from even being in the room. There is something about that detail, the unrecorded song, that goes beyond normal grief. It is the difference between losing someone and losing something that was about to exist. A piece of music that was fully formed in one man's mind and needed only another man's voice to become real. That voice is gone forever now, and so is whatever that song would have meant to the people who would have heard it. The fact that Rance Allen even reached this point is its own kind of miracle, because the sound he built was supposed to get him rejected, not celebrated. The sound that split the church in half. The Rance Allen Group did something in the early 1970s that traditional gospel circles were nowhere near ready to accept. They brought rock guitar, driving funk bass lines, and soul instrumentation directly into sacred music. They took the sound of Stax Records, the same sound behind Otis Redding and Isaac Hayes, and aimed it squarely at the church. The reaction was split right down the middle. The Church of God in Christ, the denomination that would eventually become the center of Rance Allen's entire spiritual identity, taught its members to be in the world, but not of the world. Listening to secular music was discouraged. Performing worldly-sounding music was actively frowned upon. And the deep irony buried inside that position is one of the most fascinating contradictions in all of American music history. The very roots of rock and R&B can be traced directly back to COGIC musicians. Sister Rosetta Tharpe, whose electric guitar work was studied and copied by generations of rock musicians, came out of the Church of God in Christ. Sly Stone played in a COGIC congregation in Oakland, California, before he became one of the most famous funk artists on the planet. The church that condemned worldly sounds had unknowingly birthed them. Reverend Prentice Anderson, who watched it all happen from inside the Toledo church community, told the Toledo Blade years later, "It was something new and not traditional. In the church, a lot of the church people condemned it, but the world liked it. It caught on with the younger people." The Allen brothers walked that impossible line with a precision that still deserves more credit than it has ever received. They never attempted a full secular crossover. The lyrics stayed sacred. The message stayed spiritual. The ministry stayed visible. But the energy, the grooves, the instrumentation, those belonged to a world that purists believed had no place inside a sanctuary. And while the church debated whether or not the Allen brothers were corrupting gospel music, The secular music industry was watching and taking them very seriously. The secular label that bet everything on sacred music. The story of how Rance Allen got his first record deal is one of those moments that reminds you how much of music history depends on a single person being in the right room at the right time. In 1971, the Allen brothers entered a gospel talent contest in Detroit and won a $500 prize. One of the judges that night was Dave Clark, a record promoter for Stax Records, the legendary Memphis label that had built its entire reputation on secular soul hits. Clark saw something in the Allen brothers that convinced him to take an unprecedented risk. He signed them as the very first act on Stax's brand new gospel imprint, Gospel Truth Records. A soul label built on hits by Otis Redding and Isaac Hayes was now putting its name behind raw, unfiltered gospel music led by a preacher's son from Monroe, Michigan. Rance remembered the audacity of the moment in interviews. "My manager just threw out something." He says, "Well, you know, Rance and his brothers could be your first gospel group." Their debut album arrived in 1972, and the opening statement was bold enough to make anyone sit up straight. They took the Temptations' melancholy love song, "Just My Imagination," and reworked it into an up-tempo hymn called "Just My Salvation." Where Ray Charles and others had borrowed gospel sounds for secular themes, the Allen brothers reversed the entire equation. They took secular sounds and pointed them back at God. That same year, they released "Ain't No Need of Crying," which climbed to number 61 on the R&B chart. Then came their appearance in the 1972 Wattstax documentary, filmed at the Los Angeles Coliseum during one of the largest gatherings of black musical talent in American history. They performed the funky "Lying on the Truth" and stood alongside the biggest names in soul music on a national stage. The National Association of Television and Radio Announcers named them Best Religious Group. In 1975, David Porter, the songwriter and producer behind some of Sam and Dave's biggest soul hits, co-produced the group's album A Soulful Experience at Royal Studios with legendary producer Willie Mitchell. Porter even wrote original material for the project, a soul hitmaker creating songs for a gospel group. That is how seriously the mainstream music industry had begun taking what Rance Allen was building. And then, in 1978, the group crossed a threshold almost no gospel act had ever reached. "I Belong to You" became a top 30 R&B hit. Secular radio was playing a song built entirely around devotion to God. And audiences who had never been inside a church of God in Christ's sanctuary were singing along. That single moment earned Rance Allen a title that would follow him permanently: the father of contemporary gospel music. Every major gospel artist who came after him, Andraé Crouch, Amy Grant, the Winans, Commissioned, Kirk Franklin, Fred Hammond, all of them were building on a foundation the Allen brothers had laid first. The blueprint was his. But while Rance Allen was busy rewriting the rules of an entire genre, the most private part of his life had already been quietly locked into place for years, and almost nobody outside his immediate circle understood the full dimensions of it. 49 years and a marriage nobody talked about. On December 1st, 1970, Rance Allen married Ellen Marie Groves. She was 16 years old when she first fell in love with him. They married with the blessing of her father, and it would turn out to be the only marriage of his entire life, a partnership that lasted 49 years without interruption, all the way until the morning he died. Ellen Marie became known as the First Lady of New Bethel Bountiful Blessings Ministries, but she operated almost entirely behind the scenes. She helped manage elements of his career, supported his ministry, and stayed out of the public eye with a discipline that most people in the gospel world found remarkable. In a community where pastors' wives frequently held platform roles and public profiles of their own, Ellen Marie Allen was nearly invisible to anyone outside the inner circle. The couple never had biological children together, and the reasons have never been made public. What is known is that they served as godparents to approximately 35 children, through the Church of God in Christ, building a sprawling spiritual family that replaced the traditional one they never had. In one of his final interviews discussing the marriage, Rance said with visible pride, 47 years. We live to see December 1st. It will be 48 years. He never elaborated beyond that. Ellen never gave extensive public interviews. The marriage existed as a fact everyone acknowledged and almost nobody examined closely. Ellen Marie Allen was left to grieve her husband of 49 years during a pandemic that would not even allow her to share her loss with the thousands of people who would have filled a stadium for him. She had met him when she was a teenager. She had married him when the Stax contract was still fresh. She had stood beside him through the backlash from the church, through the forgotten years when his name disappeared from the charts, through the comeback nobody expected, through the Grammy snubs that never seemed to bother him, and through the White House performance that proved the world had finally caught up to what she had always known. And now she was alone, in a way that no amount of faith or community could fully soften. And while the public never fully understood the private dimensions of Rance Allen's personal life, his professional life was about to enter a period of painful irony that history has mostly overlooked. The forgotten pioneer who watched his own children pass him by. After Stax Records collapsed and was reorganized, the Rance Allen Group lost their record deal for a stretch that felt far too long for artists of their stature. Word/Myrrh Records eventually signed them around 1983, but as the late 1980s rolled on, live appearances became less frequent, and the gaps between albums grew wider. The cruelty of the timing was almost too perfect. The Winans commissioned B.B. and C.C. Winans. These artists were riding the R&B gospel fusion to mainstream success, building on exactly the sound the Allen brothers had pioneered. The father of contemporary gospel music was watching his own musical children outrun him while his name faded from the charts. In July of 1985, Rance took on the role of founding senior pastor of New Bethel Church of God in Christ in Toledo, Ohio, under the mentorship of COGIC leader Bishop G.E. Patterson. He poured himself into ministry, evangelizing across the country alongside Patterson, while the recording career that had once defined him entered its quietest stretch. But the comeback arrived slowly, and it arrived on its own terms. The group released Phenomenon in 1991, earning a Grammy nomination. Their 2004 album, The Live Experience, became arguably the best-selling record of their entire catalog. Then came the White House performance in 2015, singing I Stood on the Banks of Jordan for President Barack Obama with Aretha Franklin in the same room. Then Snoop Dogg featured him on Blessing Me Again in 2018, a collaboration that landed on a #1 Billboard gospel album and proved a 70-year-old bishop could still surprise the world. The video was a comedic tribute to 1970s religious telethons, with Tommy Davidson and Mike Epps playing characters alongside Snoop and Rance, and it reminded everyone who watched it that this man had never lost his ability to cross every line the industry tried to draw. He received an honorary doctorate of divinity from the Urban Bible Institute of Detroit in 1995. He was inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame in 1998. He was elevated to bishop in the Church of God in Christ in November of 2011. He served on the board of the Neighborhood Improvement Foundation of Toledo. And in June of 2025, Stax Records honored the Gospel Truth catalog with the first-ever digital release of 25 albums from the imprint, ensuring that the music Rance Allen made in the early 1970s would reach ears that were not even alive when he first recorded it. He took a sound that traditionalists once condemned and turned it into the foundation an entire genre now stands on. The man who changed gospel music from the inside out left behind a silence that nobody in that world has figured out how to fill. A 49-year marriage ended in a pandemic. A routine surgery turned fatal for reasons nobody has fully explained. And somewhere in Kirk Franklin's possession sits a finished gospel song that was written for a voice the world will never hear sing it again. If this story changed the way you see one of gospel music's most overlooked pioneers, tell us in the comments which moment stayed with you the longest.